I'm Bernard Pinsky, and I've been involved with Federation actually since the predecessor of Federation called Jewish Funding Council. I was on the first board of Federation in 1987, and I had been on it almost continuously for the next approximately 25 years. At some points we were required to come off for a year here and there, but then could come back on for 6 years if you were involved in the executive. I was involved with almost every executive position in Federation, and in 2000 I was chair of the Federation campaign, and from 2005 to 2007 I was the chair of the Federation board. It was called the president at the time, and I'm still involved with Federation, both on the national level and locally. Currently I'm the chair of the security committee, which was formed about 2 years ago.
Or how did that first community involvement inspiration start?
I remember it very clearly. In 1979 I came to Vancouver, and for the first about a year and a half or 2 years didn't have much connection other than my wife is Israeli and we would meet Israelis. But in 1981, some of us will remember that Israel went into Lebanon as a defensive war to stop people from coming in and terrorists from coming in and killing people, and also there were some crude missiles at the time. So they went in to try to create a security zone. At the time, I remember very clearly that all the media was completely anti-Israel. It was very frustrating for me, and the powers that be in the Jewish community here in Vancouver decided to call a meeting to decide how to deal with it. And so I went to that meeting. And at that meeting, my concern was that many of the people who were leading the community were saying things like, it's going to blow over, let's not get upset at the media, let's not try to defend Israel, just keep your head down, don't make too much noise. And that, you know, I was a young man, and that really offended me. And so I said, no, we've got to stand up. We've got to tell them that they're wrong, and we've got to write letters. And from that, other people with me joined Canadian Jewish Congress, and we created a media watch. Many volunteers were watching the media, and every time that they said something which was not right about Israel and they criticized Israel unjustifiably, we wrote letters, and we wrote lots and lots of letters, and that kind of got me involved in the community to a large extent. At some point in the next few years, I got involved with Young Leadership, and was asked to be involved with Funding Council, which that's probably about 1983, a long time ago. So I was a very young man. I was still in my 20s.
When Federation started coming about, talk to us about what were the big challenges back then?
So Federation was really the brainchild and was pushed a lot by Arthur Fuchs, Zichrono Livracha, and Lois Rafel. And they thought it would be a great idea, and we were one of the last big communities or medium-sized communities that didn't have a federation. It took a while to convince everyone that it's a good thing. The community was run differently. There was a fundraising arm, the Funding Council, but basically people were given a choice. There's two lines: how much do you want to leave in the community, and how much do you want to go to Israel? And people really thought of it as an Israel arm to raise funds for Israel. And Israel was a different place than it is today. It needed our support financially much more than today. But people weren't really thinking about the organizations in British Columbia, in Vancouver. Lots of Jewish organizations then too, but all of them really fended for themselves. Federation, there was no organization at the time that could plan, help organizations meet the right donors, do many of the things that are done today by Federation as a central planning place. So in the beginning, it was hard to establish ourselves. Federation was created with some fanfare, but no one knew how it would work. We went to a one-line campaign, at which time the people at Federation who were on the board and really elected and appointed were given the mandate to determine what the needs were for the community, both in Israel and locally. So over time, the allocation shifted from much more Israel to today much more that are staying locally because we have the needs locally. If we don't support ourselves first, how are we going to be able to support Israel over the long term?
You mentioned long period of time that still continues in terms of your involvement with Federation. Along the way, what other key challenges arose, and what kind of achievements or milestones particularly stand out for you?
Well, as I said, when Federation started, it was the new kid on the block. It was a new organization. There'd been organizations here for a long time. Some of them were older, but many of them were very well established, and they had already their fundraising set up, and they had their way of doing things. And for example, in 1989, I believe, the Russians started coming out of the Soviet Union. And there was a call for all Jews around the world to help in that effort. And Federation stepped up and decided that it was going to do that on behalf of the Jewish community of Vancouver. The JCC at the same time decided that they were going to make a major addition to the building, and they decided they were going to do it, and they're going to raise the money. And there was very little discussion between the two organizations about the fact that there's two very major fundraising campaigns going on at the same time, which could potentially hurt each other. In the end, we did both. The community came up big, and we did both. But I think that kind of thing wouldn't happen nearly as much today. When an organization, and there's many fundraising campaigns planned for big projects. There was the Talmud Torah and the Beth Israel recently, and now there's the Louis Breyer and the JCC coming up. First stop to call on is Federation, because we are helping all of our community to plan and figure out what goes into what slot, how things will be done in an orderly way so as not to tax our donors too much, not to tax our community too much. So I think the biggest challenge was to make sure that we became more cohesive as a community. And another example of that is at the time, there was no Rav. The rabbis didn't get together and talk about things. The enmity, that's a strong word, but there was no love lost between different streams of Judaism and the different synagogues. They had different interests. They felt they were competing for membership. That's all changed. Now, I can't say Federation takes full credit for that, but I think the idea of becoming cohesive and becoming a community and bringing everyone together, I think all helped in that respect. One of the things that I did when I was president of Federation, and I felt it was really important, because even 18 years after, in 2005, 18 years after that we'd started, I still felt that there was still some cohesion to be built, and still some togetherness to be worked on. So I made it my policy as a Federation president to attend every single annual general meeting of every beneficiary organization that Federation had. And it's something like 30 or 32 organizations at the time. And I was not seeing my family a lot, because there's a lot of different organizations with meetings, and I would show up and some organization would say, the Historical Society, "Oh, Bernard, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm the president of Federation. I should be here because I'm representing the community. We should know what you're doing, and we should have an idea." And that, I think, was something that people hadn't really, I think maybe it was just the finishing touches of all this work on cohesion that we've been doing for quite a long time. We also brought in an executive director in 2002, Mark Gervis, who I think became trusted in a relatively short time to be thinking about the community as a whole and not just one organization. And I certainly remember, as being president, that some people, and I saw some emails that came to me by accident, saying, well, Bernard is saying this. I wonder what he really means. We know he has a secret agenda. And I was able to answer and say, no, I don't have a secret agenda. My agenda is to put the community's interests forward first. That's Federation's job.
So here we are in 2017, many years later. What do you think the challenges facing the community today are? The big ones.
The campaign this year has it quite right. We need to make sure that we're not going to lose people because there's so diverse, not only geographically, but there's diverse interests. And I have to say, I know it's talking about half of the Jewish population living outside of the Vancouver district, but that was the case for many years already. In 1981, I remember seeing the statistics, and almost half the population, the Jewish population, lived outside of Vancouver. Even then, they couldn't afford to live in Vancouver. Now, at that time, most of the people lived in Richmond if they didn't live in Vancouver. Now it's much more spread out, but it's still about half the population does not live in Vancouver. So, diversity in geography has become a challenge because how do we provide services? Diversity in interests, because while there were always unifying matters, there always have been some matters that are not as unifying in the community, and people have so many diverse interests now, and so many different things that they could do or do, and so many good things to spend their time on, which is constructive and good for our community and good for everybody, but it may not be connected to our community. So it's hard to keep them connected. I think that's a major challenge for us and every Jewish community now, even the ones in the East, which used to be very cohesive. I'm from Winnipeg, we were completely cohesive. I don't think that's the case anymore. Our society gives us so many opportunities as Jews and as people in the community that we have to be chosen by everyone individually to be something that the Jewish community has to be something that they decide is going to be important to them. And we've got to give them reasons for that. And that's a challenge, but I think we're up to it.
Hearing you speak, there's obviously a lot of passion in your voice for the community and even for the work of Federation. Why is Federation important to you?
Federation is important because it puts it all together. It puts the idea of the Klal Yisrael, everyone is part of one peoplehood, together with planning of how we're going to move forward as a people, together with the fundraising aspects, because the world takes money in order to, it's the fuel that we run on. And you can have all kinds of wonderful ideas and all kinds of wonderful intentions, but if you haven't got any money behind you, then you can't do what you intended to do. For example, I am the current chair of the Federation Security Committee, and we realized several years ago that security has become a very big issue in the world, and we need to get much more organized, and we need to have better security. We've got, in fact, there's 29 buildings that are Jewish buildings in the greater Vancouver area. They're all spread out all over the place. But those buildings have a big variety of security protocols and security screens. As a community, together, we can decide, and we just have hired a new director of security for the entire community, paid by Federation, raised through Federation campaign dollars, but who will be advising and working with every Jewish organization in our community. And it's a big job, but we think that we need to feel more secure as a community. Hopefully, knock on wood, nothing will ever happen in Vancouver, but it's much better to be prepared. And even if something does happen and you couldn't stop it, more people know what to do. More people know how to react. Maybe you can contain it. Maybe you can fix things faster. There's all kinds of things that we are able to do if we plan in advance, but you can't do that without planning, funds, and the people that want to put the work into it.
We've spoken about federation, we've spoken about the benefits to the community. How about for you personally? How has federation benefited you?
I always say that with respect to my volunteer jobs, and Federation's been the #1 volunteer place that I've ever had in my life, I always get out as much or more than I put in. I meet wonderful people. I've gone on many Federation trips to Israel, missions, and I've experienced a fantastic exhilaration from being connected with Federation and the people that Federation is connected with. I served as Federation's representative on the National Jewish Federations of Canada board for about 15 years, and I was the treasurer for that organization for 4 years. And the connections that I made were great, and the things that I feel that I'm part of accomplishing are very, very gratifying. So I will say that that Federation has really brought forward a lot of very good, talented people to work in it. And one of the nice things I've seen is that organizations that have talented and hardworking volunteers often come to Federation at some point, because whatever organization you're working with, you realize that that organization is benefiting from a strong Federation. And once they are through whatever they've done with that organization, they still love it. It's still their first home, perhaps, but they do things for Federation. They come to Federation, they volunteer for Federation, and they see that by helping the community as a whole, they're helping each individual organization and us as a people, and each city. If the stronger each city becomes and is, the stronger as a people we are across the world.